We are so far removed from the idea of America and its minarchism written in the United States Constitution, where we have to bring her back to where she belongs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. Liberty Defenders. I want to praise each one of you for hanging out with me during this whole series. I hope many of you have learned a thing or two from the series. And again, I don't want to convert people, right? That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to critique the way you think. I just want to give you a different perspective on how to live in a great police light, if hardly much at all, type of society, and how we handle different situations like crime and taxation as a minimal state. Because I really think at the end of the day, everybody will agree that they prefer the, I don't know what you want to call it, the boot is off of their necks for once in their lives. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the future of freedom. Is Minarchy achievable? But I'm going to go a different format with this show. Okay. I want to answer the questions of the biggest critics out there when it comes to minarchy and a small government, not a limited government, a small government that will be limited. Because there's a lot of people that really do not understand what it means to be free of the chains of government, the chains of regulations and mandates and edicts. They're so busy being controlled, and that control creates fear. Okay. And if you're in that state of being, how are you living life? How are you living life looking over your shoulder, wondering if you broke a law, broke a regulation, broke a statute? All the time, even in your sleep. I mean, even the simplest thing is walking to your car or your truck or your SUV, whatever you drive. They go from point A to point B. As soon as you get in that car, most people, okay, I know my insurance is here, right? My license is here. My registration is here. Okay, I'm good to go. And you get out on that road and you're constantly looking for the man. Everybody does it, right? You're constantly looking for the man and where he could be sitting to run his radar, right? You look for people to flash their headlights at you to alert you that the policeman or woman is up ahead, or the sheriff's deputy is up ahead running speed. Every time you come to an intersection, you're looking both ways to avoid traffic, but you're also looking both ways to see if there's a lawman by there, right? We all live in that fear. We see that speed limit sign, and some of us are afraid to go even one over the speed limit in the areas they live in because they know they'll get pulled over on some BS. right? That's an example of the state applying aggression. They're violating the NAP through fear because of their tactics, right? You're constantly looking over your shoulder. And that's not a way to live. I mean, I'd say do the speed limit. But even then, right? Even then, we've seen outcomes where someone's pulled over and something crazy happens on the side of the road, right? But that's the smaller things, right? We I think we all agree that we want to get to a non-aggressive state, a small state, right? A state that has the means and the wiggle room to protect the country from being invaded, right? Their obligation to defend the nation of people. It's a lot easier when you apply what their only functions are, like our beloved United States Constitution, right? Our United States Constitution, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again for the people in the back. It is the greatest minarchist document ever written. And do not let anyone tell you different, because that Constitution explicitly says what the government can do. That's it. But so many people has bastardized the King's English to twist it to mean something else. And research shows, even from the forefathers themselves, from the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers, and the Four Institutes of Coke, and Bouvier's Dictionary and English Common Law, has told you that the way they're interpreting our Constitution is improper, but they just go with it because people don't understand how to challenge it. See, when we rewrite this document, and we write this document the way to that it is plain and clear for our minarchist government and society, there will be no mistakes in how you interpret that. Because these elitists and their elitist puppets and their flock every day are sitting behind desk scheming a way to take away the rights of the people now, because they've already taken away the rights of the state. They have already taken away the rights of the several states through constitutional amendments, right? Through legislation, right? It's about time we get back to a free place where the people of the several states are free from federal overreach and aggression. We're also free from state aggression. In this final show of this series of implementing minarchy, like I said, I'm going to answer the most challenging questions. Those questions that probe the very foundation of a minimal state, right? We'll be discussing how to prevent the night watchman from turning into a tyrant, okay? How a free society would handle environmental issues and public infrastructure, and whether a reliance on voluntary action is truly realistic. So, the first question: how do you stop the watchman from becoming an aggressor? And I want you to just listen, just hear try to hear what I'm saying. Okay. Listen to me, but try to hear what I'm saying here as you have your own thoughts on this, right? Because this question in particular is the most important of it all, because we're trying to get to the minarchist state, and we still have people that may, want to be controlled by the state, right? Somebody that's watched the show sent me a particular question, right? And they go by the initial CW from Broward County, Florida. They wrote and they asked, how do you prevent this powerful armed government, even a minimal one, from growing and becoming tyrannical? Who polices the police? This is very, very valid when we're talking about the people being freer than they are now and creating this minarchist society, right? But this concern, right, goes to the very heart of this minarchist project, which is built on a non-aggression principle, even for the state itself, right? If you go back and remember our blueprint, right, the answer lies in three crucial safeguards, none of which exist in a vacuum, okay? First, a strictly limited constitution, right? Our minimal government would be bound by an incredibly concise constitution that defines its powers and scope with absolute clarity, explicitly forbidding it from interfering in the economy, social issues, or foreign affairs. Okay? This practical application of the night watchman state, as we defined in episode 1, right? Now, the power of judicial review and the threat of other popular removals through recall or impeachment would hold all officials accountable to this new constitution, ensuring they remain servants of the people and not their masters. Secondly, the fear of a well-regulated militia, as written in our Constitution's Second Amendment, would serve as a crucial check on government overreach. If the government ever overstepped its bounds and became tyrannical, the populace would be armed and organized to defend their liberty. As the quote goes, right? A government that fears its people is a free government, right? While this is obviously a last resort, CW, the very existence of an armed populace is a powerful deterrent against a government that might be tempted to use its power to violate the rights of its citizens. And finally, maybe the most importantly, the financial constraints, okay, of a minarchist state would prevent tyranny. As we discussed, if I remember, in episode number 5 on taxation, the government's funding would be limited to a small, minimal, earmarked consumption tax. Without a seemingly endless stream of tax dollars to fund this expansion, the government is actually starved of the resources it needs to become the aggressor, right? The root of all evil is money, right? Money makes the world go round, right? Hmm? You can't pull things out of thin air without money, right? It can't when they don't have these funds, right? It can't afford to build a massive surveillance state or an intelligence apparatus that spies on its own people, right? So the lack of funding is a powerful passive check on power. So I hope CW from Broward County, I hope that answered your question. And I greatly appreciate one, you for listening and, taking, your own ideas and questioning what's being presented to you, because this is how we grow as a people. This is how we grow as a people. And I hope you continue listening and watching Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. The second question I have is from A.T. from Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, Florida. They say we need roads and we need clean air and water. How do you get a free market to pay for that when everyone can just free ride, in air quotes, on someone else's investment? Good question. Yet, this is a classic challenge to any minimal government model, right? But it's one, our vision for voluntary solutions, right? From, I think, episode six, right? Would definitely answer this question, because in a minarchist society, there's no such thing as a public good. Okay. That is, that is immune, okay, to market solutions, right? Take roads for the example, right? And we're already seeing this in real life. Okay. Here in Florida, there are, privately operated toll roads like the Suncoast Parkway. Those of you that are on the Gulf Coast of Florida, that's State Route 589. It goes from Crystal River, or 44, 40, State Route 44 east of Crystal River, all the way down to the Tampa airport, and it connects with State Route 60 down in Tampa. You got the Florida Turnpike, right? You have the toll roads on 295 in Jacksonville, Florida, right? These are privately owned toll roads, right? They're technically owned by the state, but we'll get into that kind of here in a little bit, or in another episode, right? But I'm using that as an example, right? Those roads, right? If you've ever driven on five, for my folks out here on the Gulf Coast, if you've ever driven 589, you know what I'm talking about. If you've driven the turnpike from south of Inverness, Florida, all the way down to MIA, you know what I'm talking about. Those roads are better maintained and more efficient, right, than, let's say, the regular state roads, right? See, in our minarchist future, road ownership would be entirely private, with companies building and maintaining them, right? As we discussed in episode number 5. They would get a return on their massive investment through user fees or tolls or subscription fees, right? To maintain the road, kind of like, again, the turnpike or anything in Florida you have to use a Sun Pass for, right? Or Easy Pass in some states. If you're up in the New England area, New York, you have the Easy Pass, right? Same concept, but it's not state ran, it's private ran, right? With that, this would create the competition as a direct incentive to provide a quality service, a quality road, etc. Right? A private company that builds a poorly maintained road and charges high toll will quickly lose business to a competitor, if not get bought out by the competitor. Right? Now, AT, the other part of your question, when it comes to the environment, okay, A free society would rely on strong private property rights, which is a cornerstone of a minarchist philosophy, right? As we established in episodes 1 and 3, if I remember, every individual has a right to their property. If your neighbor's factory pollutes your land or your water, that's a direct violation of your property rights and the non aggression principle. You would have the right to sue them in court for damages under tort law, right? And that reminds me of a conversation I had last night on TikTok with an individual that didn't understand that the non aggression axiom even applies to things like roads and things that happens on it still applies. Okay. But again, statists don't understand this because the only thing they know how to do is state. Y'all heard me say before, the statists will continue to state until they're stateless. Right. But I digress from that, right? The threat of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit enforced by our streamlined justice system and the ensuing market backlash would be far more effective deterrent against pollution than a government agency that can be lobbied or a fine that is just a cost of doing business. The key is that every environmental harm has a victim, and a just legal system will make the aggressor pay for that damage. Period. Again, I appreciate you, AT from Hillsborough County, for checking in and listening. I appreciate the question. I mean, it still challenges my brain and my belief, even though I've did these episodes for the last 8 weeks. But again, right, that's how we stay firm. That's how we get better. Right, that's how we get better. And that's where we are. So I appreciate you. The third question comes from Palm Beach County, initials TW. TW in Palm Beach County presents the question, right? I appreciate your vision, but doesn't it all depend on people being good? What about greed? Without government to manage it, would a free society just be a brutal free for all? And this is something I hear all the time when I'm on social media, especially TikTok, when I, when I'm talking about Minarchy and getting into that conversation that I never ever get to finish hardly because they like to cut people off because when they hear freedom, they hear liberty, they will cut you off. Because they don't want to hear that. They just want to hear the state solution. And no, the state is not the solution. The state usually makes it worse, right? The state always makes the state always exacerbates a problem that the people could probably easily solve because we have all the resources. They don't. They got to buy our resources to correct their problems. Why do we need them? We can just correct it ourselves, right? But anyway, I digress. So my answer, TW from Palm Beach County, is a free society doesn't require people to be saints. Okay. It simply channels self interest into productive, cooperative outcomes. Okay. In a true free market, now don't confuse that with free market capitalism because that's an oxymoron by definition. Okay. We're talking about a true free market, government out of the way of the economy, period, right? In a free market, the only way to get ahead is to serve others, right? I want you to hear what I just said, even the people in the chat or people listening to later. The only in a free market, the only way to get ahead is to serve others, right? I had this saying a long time ago, right? Because when you walk down the street, right, you're not necessarily you're not necessarily selling something, but your personality with people. Every time you walk down the street or you walk by people, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, how you doing, ma'am? Right? You're selling personality, right? You're serving others. You're helping people get their day moving, right? They might be having a bad day and have a smile on their face, but you say, good morning, sir. They perk right up. Hey, good morning. How you doing? Right? You're selling personality. You're selling love, right? You're selling cheer and joy to people first thing in the morning or in the early afternoon, right? I came up with a saying for that or acronym. It's called WACTEO. 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 Remember the car Paseo? Take off the PA and change it to WA. WACTEO, right? WACTEO. And that stands for we are customers to each other. Because we are, right? Again, as I mentioned, you walk out that door. You walk out that door, you walk in the coffee shop, how y'all doing? Right? And especially here in the South, you could be sitting in the breakfast spot and someone just come in, how y'all doing today? How y'all doing? And everybody looks up, hey, right? We see that all the time, right? That's what I'm talking about. You're selling love. You're selling personality. You're selling cheer. You're selling genuineness. These are the things we need we need it in society now. We need more people like that, especially our young people. We need them to be more cheerful, even though they're having a bad day. A greeting of someone, meeting of a greeting of an elder, will perk them up, right? The young kids, oh, how you doing, right? I can say I'm blessed to live in an area where even the young kids greet each other as sir and ma'am. I'm talking to 20 somethings, 19 somethings. I hear it all the time when I'm out here. How you doing, sir? Right? And it's not like sir as in, it's a play on words or like you're my buddy, like genuinely, right? Right? Genuinely, they're like sir and ma'am to each other around here. And they don't discriminate. They'll walk around the store. Everybody, they walk by, how you doing today? Doing all right? All right, good. Right? A head nod, like, how you doing? Right? This is what I'm talking when we talk about the free market. The free market, right? All that's part of the free market. You got to serve others, right? You got to be able to serve others to get ahead, right? A company, right, doesn't make a profit by being greedy, right? And uncaring. It makes a profit by creating a product or service that people want and need. Okay. That your local baker doesn't bake bread out of charity. He bakes it to make a living. But in doing so, he feeds his community and earns a profit because he provides a valuable service, right? The profit motive, when guided by the rules of honest trade and respect for private property, is a powerful engine for innovation and mutual benefit. Contrast that with this with government, where self interest often manifests as lobbying for special favors, rent seeking, and a competition over other people's money, right? This is the inefficiency and bureaucratic bloat that we see, right? And we've highlighted in our discussions on military spending, which was, I think, episode 4, welfare in episode 6, right? Remember, when power is centralized, greed and the pursuit of power corrupts absolutely. But in our minarchist blueprint and our minarchist society, by stripping the government of that power, effectively disarms greed and forces it to operate in a way that benefits everyone. The system actually encourages voluntary cooperation and punishes coercion. I appreciate that question, Mr. TW from Palm Beach County, Florida. Again, I want to thank you for listening, taking the time to listen to all of the episodes. I greatly appreciate it on many levels. Much love to you and everybody else that has, sent in questions and all that good stuff. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it very much. Again, these are the discussions we need to be having all the time, not just sometime, but all the time, right? And I'll say this: we can sit around. People can sit around and we can bicker about Trump and all the political parties. We can do all that bickering, right? But my question still remains, right? And I target this question for everybody that is like die hard, like, ride or die Donald Trump or ride or die anti Donald Trump, right? When Donald Trump leaves office in 2028, what policy discussions have you had during this time to either improve on his policies or for the other team to scale back some of his policies or help add on to the policies that you seem benefit you? What were those discussions instead of jumping in videos and you're calling out people for these different behaviors, things of that nature? Where's your policy discussion? Because 2028 will be here before we know it. And if you don't have a policy position, guess what the two parties are going to do? They're going to gaslight you. They're going to give you half truths, and they're going to have you sell your liberty up the river for the sake of your vote to continue doing what they're doing or play catch up from when Donald Trump basically shut them completely down for 8 years. Those are the discussions you should be having, the policy discussions, not only amongst your own clan, your own political stripe clan, but with the opposing team without animus, right? If we go back in history and we look at the Constitutional Convention, the Committee of the Whole at the U.S. Constitutional Convention, Federalist versus Anti-Federalist, fought like cats and dogs. They didn't like each other, but they knew that they knew at the end of the whole thing, and in the back of their minds, right? They didn't have animus against the Federalists, and the Federalists didn't have animus against the Anti-Federalists because they knew they had a country to form. All bullshit aside, they knew they had a country to form, right? We should still live in the spirit of the framers of this country. We should be having those policy discussions every day. We should be having those policy discussions because when the next president comes along, what is your position going to be? You going back to the old you, or are you actually standing 10 toes down in this game? Because the one thing I hate the most, and a lot of you that have been with me since 2017 while I've been doing this, right? You know that the one thing I hate the most is a person that sticks their toes in and plays around in the water and jumps out. We don't have time for disruption. You either go 10 toes down and come all the way in, you jump out. Right? If you're a single issue person, you can be that single issue person. Just be well versed in that single issue. Be well versed. Be able to articulate your arguments in that space. Because Lord forbid, the one thing I can say, right, about, let's say, people in the Republican sphere is a lot of them don't talk on every subject, unlike the other team does, the Democrats and the liberals and all that stuff, right? Those guys talk on every subject that's seen on their platform, and they try to talk to it like they're scholarly, and they sound crazy. But not for nothing, the Republicans are starting to sound that way too, because they're trying to be well versed in everything. If if you are versed in the military industrial complex and how to dismantle it, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane and become proficient in that lane. My lane is government structure, government policy, and minarchy. I stay in my lane. I don't talk about immigration. I don't talk about these things. That's my lane. I don't go anywhere else outside of that lane. And that's how we get better as people. This is how we get better as a society. This is how we improve government. By staying in our lanes, connecting with the right people, and not just jumping on board someone else's bandwagon because they're about to do something great when you're already doing something great. It just wasn't your time for you to shine, right? I mean, I can sit here, me personally, y'all have seen me grow exponentially over the last 8 years. Y'all have seen the places I've been and places I've gone to. Some y'all remember when I got invited to the White House to see Donald Trump, both 2 times. Y'all were here for that. Y'all were here for that. It was my time to shine in that moment. And both of those ones, the second one in particular was was the best one because I got a 35-minute sit down with Donald Trump face to face. His first term. Y'all see y'all seen me grow in this space, and I don't deviate to either side. I don't try to jump over here and jump in here and jump over there. I know my spot is going to come again. And I'm going to be extra ready now because of more the knowledge I have gained sent over, over the 8 years. I'll be even more armed for what may come. And everybody has to find their lane. Everybody has to find their lane and stay in it and become proficient in it. Now we're gonna wind this thing down a little bit here. We got a little bit left here. I want to conclude this last episode by saying I hope that I addressed not only questions you had throughout this series, right? But even the pressing concerns that you guys have had, right? This minarchist model that I created is not a utopian fantasy, so people don't take it that way, right? It's a pragmatic. The what I set up, the blueprint I wrote or set up, I think is a more pragmatic and a more principled solution to the challenges of human nature and the inherent dangers of a centralized government or centralized power, right? It's a system built not on blind faith, but on the belief that a free people armed with liberty and respect for individual rights are capable of solving their own problems. I believe that 100%. Call me naive, but I I will always believe until I take my last breath that man is inherently good. Man is inherently good by all means. Circumstances biases, and environmental factors can change a person to be the worse. Do I blame that person? Not necessarily. Half. Because if you're grown, you know what the problem is, you know how to fix it, right? But I can't fault the living man or woman. I can't fault the living man for the environment they grew up in. Is it an excuse for their behavior? No. But I don't blame them for the environmental factors that may have affected them, like abject poverty, right? What does abject poverty do to a child? It can create resentment because they may not have the things their friends have in school. They might not be able to go get their first car until they're in their mid-20s because their parents, right? Because their parents were not, they weren't financially able to, right? Abject poverty creates animosity and resentment. And then what do they do? Those same that environment they grew up in of poverty and the resentment they created fuels them to go out and do things potentially illegally, like sell drugs to improve their financial situation. Again, do I fault the person for growing up in the conditions they were in? No, I don't blame them. But what I do blame them for is the behaviors and the choices they make to curb that resentment or that desire, that greed desire. That's what I fault. That's what I fault. And this is when the community needs to step in. This is when society, when they say it takes a village, not like the way the Democrats and the left depicts it, but it takes a village. It takes a people to show love to a individual that has that resentment and animosity in the community because he grew up in abject poverty, to show him love and show him the right way to get out of that struggle. It's up to us as a village to show him or her that and show them the good that is within them, regardless of the conditions they are in. That's our job. That's our job. And I'm speaking of us Gen Xers. It's our job to pass down what we know to these millennials, to these Gen Zers, regardless if they listen or not. The boomers did us the same way. The silent generation taught us the same way. And it's time for us to pass that stuff down. You might be out here, young man, thugging in the streets, carrying a switch, selling dope at the back of your rusted out Cadillac. But my brother, my sister, let me tell you, there's a better way. There's a better way to satisfy that greed. You may not like the slow process of satisfying that greed you have because you were deprived of things in your childhood because of abject poverty. My brother in the trailer park, you hear what I'm saying? You cooking up meth in your backyard, brother, hoping you don't get caught by the police so you can help your family get out of the struggle. That's the wrong way, brothers and sisters. There is a better way, and you won't lose your liberty and freedom in the process. It's my job. It's my fellow man job that think like me to foster you that information to keep you from putting your life in the toilet and losing your liberty and freedom for the rest of your life because you made a bad decision because of greed and resentment from being in abject poverty. This is something we got to think about because the three generations behind us, the millennials, even though they're hard headed as hell, they can still learn a thing or two. Gen Z, they can still learn a thing or two. Gen Alpha, they're just starting to learn the way. We got to get to them too. And Generation Beta, they're not even hit kindergarten yet. But we got to teach them too. We got a big task. We got a big task because the boomers are getting away quicker. They're getting away quick. And here we are, we remain to pass on the knowledge the silent generation and the boomers taught us. It's up to us liberty loving people, us even conservative mind people, my liberty minded people. We are the last hope for this nation. We are the last hope for this nation, as Ms. Val said in the comments, choosing communism as a result of greed. You would that statement says a lot because it tells a story that we've been seeing with these young kids for the past 10 years. They would rather sell out their liberty to a central power because of greed, right? And yet those same people talk about the greed of the 1%, the billionaires, and you hear the people like Bernie Sanders pontificating on the TV or in the well of the Senate saying these things. We got to tax the wealthy. Choosing communism is a result of greed. You're greedy. You're chasing after someone's resources that you didn't own. Hmm? It's that same mentality, right? It's those people that are communist, right? Are the mentality of the young man and the young men and women I was just talking about in the scenario, right? They feel like they've lived in abject poverty. They're never taught anything outside of that, right? And they have the resentment of not having the thing that they have. Looking at this in real time, these communists want to rip the money from the rich because they are greedy and jealous over those people up there. I could give a damn about a billionaire or 1%. I could give a damn about them. It's not the fact that I sit here and say, I got money or I got all this. I don't say that because I know it's not true. I'm not going to lie to myself. But I didn't grow up resenting people because I didn't have things and they want to go after those people that have the things that I want. That is greed. That is greed talking. Why can't you give me some? Why can't you get no? They don't owe you nothing. They don't owe you nothing. This is why, again, it's important for us to reach out to these people and explain to them these values. Because either way, if you go the communist route, you're selling out your freedom to a centralized power. If you get out here and get caught being greedy by thieving and thugging and dope dealing, you're going to lose your liberty to the central power. Every single time. I want to thank y'all for joining me on this closing episode of this topic, implementing Minarchy. Remember, the conversation will never end here or anywhere else as long as I am breathing. Do you hear what I'm saying? This is not going to end because our goal, again, like I said, my goal is to see freedom flourish for my great grandchildren. So the conversation never stops. It's only beginning. Until next time, keep questioning the status quo and keep chasing every bit of liberty that you see, find, and touch. Until next time, y'all, peace and love.